Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the back corner of the massive assembly hall, trying to ignore the whispers and pointed looks from the alien delegates around her. The Galactic Confederation's monthly meeting was always the same story. Hundreds of species from across the galaxy gathered to discuss trade, territory, and politics while treating humanity like unwelcome children who had somehow wandered into an adult conversation. The hall itself was a marvel that still took Sarah's breath away. Built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, its crystalline walls stretched up for miles, filled with floating platforms where different species sat according to their atmospheric needs. The HFY, with their sharp crystal bodies that rang like bells when they moved, occupied the prime speaking platforms near the center. The Luminary Collective existed as pure energy, their forms shifting and glowing in specially designed containment fields. Dozens of other species filled the remaining spaces, each more advanced and established than humanity. Sarah checked her tablet, noting that Earth's petition for mining rights in the Outer Rim was scheduled for discussion near the end of the session. She had been requesting the same thing for 3 years now, and each time the response was the same polite dismissal. Humanity was too new, too primitive, too dangerous to be trusted with important resources. The current speaker was Chancellor Vexmore of the HFY Empire, his crystalline form catching the light as he gestured dramatically. His voice rang out through the translation system, each word carrying the musical tones that made his species sound like living wind chimes. The mining rights in Sector 7 Alpha should obviously go to the hegemony, Chancellor Vexmore declared. They have the technology, the experience, and the wisdom to extract resources without damaging the delicate balance of those systems, unlike certain newer species who can barely keep their primitive vessels from falling apart in deep space. Several delegates turned to look at Sarah, and she felt her cheeks burn. The comment was clearly aimed at humanity, whose ships were indeed less advanced than most galactic standards. Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 43 years ago, making them practically infants in galactic terms. Most of the species here had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Admiral Kresh of the Hegemony Navy stood to respond, his forearms gesturing in what Sarah had learned was a sign of agreement among his people. "The Chancellor speaks wisdom," he said in his deep, rumbling voice. "The Outer Rim systems are too valuable and too dangerous for inexperienced hands. The Hegemony has been mining asteroids for over 2 millennia. We understand the proper techniques." Sarah wanted to argue, but she knew it would be pointless. Every species here saw humanity the same way adults saw toddlers playing with toy blocks. Sure, it was cute that the humans had figured out how to build spaceships, but real work should be left to the grown-ups. The debate continued for another hour, with various species making their cases for the mining rights. The Luminari spoke about their efficient energy extraction methods. The Zephyrians discussed their advanced robotic mining fleets. Even the relatively minor Keltor Union made a presentation about their experience with similar operations in the inner systems. When Sarah's turn finally came, she stood and activated her small holographic projector. The display showed Earth's mining proposals, carefully researched and planned over months of work by the best human engineers and scientists. The United Earth Government requests consideration for mining rights in 3 systems within Sector 7 Alpha, she began. Our surveys indicate rich deposits of rare metals that we can extract efficiently while minimizing environmental impact. Chancellor Vexmore's crystalline body chimed with what Sarah had learned was their equivalent of laughter. "Efficient? Your ships barely qualify as spaceworthy. Your largest vessel is smaller than our escort craft. What could humans possibly extract that we cannot do better and faster?" "We may be newer to space travel," Sarah replied carefully, "but humanity has always been resourceful. We believe we can contribute meaningfully to galactic commerce and cooperation." "Contribute?" Admiral Kresh's 4 eyes focused on her with what might have been amusement. "Young species, you have been in space for less than 50 of your years. Some of us have been building stellar civilizations since before your planet developed complex life. Perhaps you should focus on learning from your betters before attempting to compete with them." The comment stung because it contained enough truth to hurt. Humanity was the newest member of the Confederation, and their technology really was primitive compared to species who had been perfecting it for millennia. Human ships were slower, smaller, and less efficient than almost everyone else's. Their weapons were basic kinetic and energy systems, while others had moved on to exotic matter manipulation and quantum disruption fields. The vote was predictable. The hegemony received the mining rights by an overwhelming majority. Humanity received 3 votes total, all from species that Sarah suspected voted for them out of pity, rather than genuine belief in human capabilities. As the session ended and delegates began filtering out, Sarah gathered her materials and prepared to return to the human embassy. She had grown used to these defeats, but they never stopped being frustrating. Earth had so much to offer the galaxy if the other species would just give them a chance. Ambassador Chen. The voice belonged to researcher Quintal of the Exploration Guild, one of the few aliens who had ever shown genuine interest in humanity. The multi-tentacled being approached her platform, its translucent skin shifting through various colors that indicated curiosity and concern. Researcher Quintal. Sarah nodded politely. I suppose you heard how that went. Indeed. However, I wished to discuss something else entirely. The alien's tentacles curled in what Sarah recognized as a gesture of urgency. We have detected something in the galactic core, something that concerns the Guild greatly. Sarah paused in packing her materials. The Exploration Guild was one of the most respected organizations in the Confederation, dedicated to mapping and studying the galaxy's mysteries. If they were concerned about something, it was worth listening. What kind of something? She asked. Signals, artificial signals from deep in the core, unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be awakening something that has been dormant for a very long time. Quintal's skin shifted to darker colors that indicated fear. The Guild believes it may be connected to the old legends of the Void Whisperers. Sarah had heard whispers of those legends in her 3 years at the Confederation. Ancient artificial intelligences that supposedly existed in the galactic core, dormant for millions of years. Most species treated them like ghost stories, but the Exploration Guild took ancient mysteries seriously. Why are you telling me this? Sarah asked. Because what we have detected suggests they are not just awakening but preparing to emerge, and when they do, the galaxy may need every resource available. Quintal's tentacles gestured toward the departing delegates. Even resources that others consider primitive. Before Sarah could respond, her communication device chimed with an urgent priority message from Earth. The signal was encrypted with the highest security protocols, meaning it came from either the President or the Defense Council. She quickly decoded the message and felt her blood run cold. 3 words appeared on her screen. Project Dark Reach, successful. Sarah looked up at Quintal, then at the alien delegates still discussing their mining rights and trade disputes, completely unaware that everything in the galaxy was about to change. Humanity's most classified project, the one that had consumed vast resources and the galaxy's best human minds for the past decade, had finally achieved its impossible goal. The galaxy might consider humanity primitive, but they were about to learn that humans had been working on something that would make all their advanced technology look like stone tools. Sarah just hoped they would be ready for what came next. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez floated in his command chair, watching through the reinforced viewport as the final pieces of humanity's greatest secret took shape in the darkness of Saturn's rings. The shipyard was invisible to most sensors, hidden among billions of ice and rock fragments that provided perfect camouflage. Even the Confederation's most advanced surveillance would see nothing but natural debris. But Marcus knew better. Behind the holographic disguises and stealth fields, 3 vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever imagined were reaching completion. The Terra Invicta, Sol's Vengeance, and Humanity Ascendant represented 10 years of humanity's most classified research, and they were about to change everything. Admiral, the dark matter containment systems are showing green across all 3 ships, reported Dr. Elizabeth Ward, the project's chief scientist. Her voice carried exhaustion from years of 18-hour days, but also excitement that was impossible to hide. We're actually doing it, Marcus. We're really doing it. Marcus nodded, still finding it hard to believe himself. Dark matter made up most of the universe, but it barely interacted with normal matter at all. For decades, human scientists had known it was there, but couldn't touch it, study it, or use it. Then Dr. Ward and her team had discovered something that changed everything. The breakthrough had come from studying ancient ruins on Proxima Centauri b, humanity's first colony world. The structures were millions of years old and contained technology that seemed impossible, even by galactic standards. Most importantly, they revealed that dark matter wasn't just invisible stuff floating in space. It was a fundamental force that connected everything in the universe, and with the right approach, it could be controlled. "How are our test pilots adapting to the dark matter interface?" Marcus asked. Dr. Ward's expression grew more serious. "That's the challenging part. The neural connections required to pilot these ships put enormous strain on the human brain. We can only use people with very specific genetic markers, and even they need extensive conditioning to handle the psychological effects." Marcus understood. The pilots had to link their minds directly to dark matter fields that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Most humans who tried it either went insane or died from neural overload. Only about 1 in 10,000 people had the right combination of mental flexibility and genetic resistance to survive the process. Captain Elena Vasquez was one of those rare individuals. Marcus watched her through the observation window as she ran final tests on the Terra Invicta's control systems. Her eyes were closed, and faint energy patterns played across her skin, where the neural interfaces connected to her nervous system. She was literally thinking the ship through its paces, moving tons of exotic matter with pure mental commands. "Captain Vasquez, how are the navigation systems responding?" Marcus asked through the intercom. Elena's eyes opened, and for a moment, they seemed to hold depths that hadn't been there before the neural conditioning. "Better than we hoped, Admiral. I can feel the dark matter currents throughout the entire solar system. Navigation will be intuitive once we're fully operational." That was another advantage nobody expected. While other species had to calculate, jump coordinates, and worry about gravity wells interfering with their faster-than-light drives, the human ships could simply ride the natural flow of dark matter that existed everywhere in space. They could appear anywhere in the galaxy almost instantly, without the complex calculations that limited everyone else. An urgent alarm sounded through the shipyard, and Marcus turned to his communication officer. "What is it, Lieutenant?" "Priority message from Earth, sir. Ambassador Chen is requesting immediate contact with Project Dark Reach leadership. She says it's about something called the Void Whisperers." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Void Whisperers were mentioned in some of the alien technology they had studied, but only in fragments that suggested something ancient and dangerous sleeping in the galactic core. If they were waking up now, just as humanity's new ships were ready for testing, it couldn't be coincidence. "Put her through on the secure channel," Marcus ordered. Sarah Chen's image appeared on the main screen, and Marcus could see the worry in her expression. "Admiral Rodriguez, we have a situation. The Exploration Guild has detected artificial signals from the galactic core, and they believe something called the Void Whisperers is awakening. More importantly, I just received word that Confederation long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures moving out from the core region." "How massive?" Dr. Ward asked, joining the conversation. "Large enough that they're evacuating entire star systems as a precaution. The Guild estimates we have maybe 6 months before whatever is out there reaches the outer territories. The Confederation is calling an emergency session to coordinate military response." Marcus exchanged glances with Dr. Ward. 6 months was barely enough time to complete final testing on the 3 prototype ships, let alone build a fleet large enough to make a difference in a galactic war. "Sarah, what do we know about Confederation military capabilities against this threat?" "Not enough. The Void Whisperers are mentioned in ancient records from dozens of species, but most of the information has been lost over millions of years. What we do know suggests they were responsible for wiping out several galaxy-spanning civilizations in the distant past." Dr. Ward leaned forward. "Admiral, if the threat is as serious as it sounds, we may need to accelerate our timeline. The ships aren't fully tested yet, but the core systems are functional." Marcus nodded slowly. Humanity had spent 10 years preparing for the day when they would reveal their true capabilities to the galaxy. He had imagined it happening during a trade negotiation or territorial dispute, not in response to an existential threat to all intelligent life. Captain Vasquez, how quickly can you and the other pilots be ready for combat operations? Elena's expression grew determined. We've been training for this moment for 5 years, Admiral. The ships feel like extensions of our own bodies now. If something is threatening the galaxy, we're ready to stop it. Then we move to active status immediately, Marcus decided. Dr. Ward, I want all 3 ships fully loaded and equipped within 72 hours. Sarah, tell the Confederation that humanity is prepared to contribute to the defense effort, but don't give them any details about our capabilities yet. Sir, should we inform Earth's government about the acceleration of the timeline? Asked his aide. Marcus considered this. The President and Defense Council had been briefed on Project Dark Reach, but they expected months more testing before the ships became operational. Now humanity was about to deploy weapons that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy, and they were doing it in response to a threat that might destroy everything anyway. Send a full briefing to the President, but make it clear that we're proceeding with or without official approval. This is beyond politics now. As his staff began implementing the new timeline, Marcus turned back to watch Captain Vasquez continue her systems tests. The young woman was controlling forces that most of the galaxy couldn't even detect, let alone manipulate. In a few days, she and her fellow pilots would take humanity's secret weapons into space for the first time. The galaxy still saw humans as primitive newcomers who barely deserved respect. They had no idea that Earth's children had learned to harness the fundamental structure of reality itself. Marcus just hoped that would be enough to stop whatever was coming from the galactic core. Outside the viewport, the 3 dark matter warships hung in space like sleeping predators, waiting for their moment to change the universe forever. Captain Elena Vasquez felt the Terra Invicta respond to her thoughts as they emerged from dark matter transit at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. Through her neural link, she could sense her fellow captains in the other 2 ships. Captain James Morrison in Soul's Vengeance and Captain Sarah Kim in Humanity Ascendant. Together, they commanded more firepower than the rest of humanity's space fleet combined. But looking at the chaos ahead of them, Elena wondered if it would be enough. Nexus Prime, the Galactic Confederation's capital world, was under attack. Massive, geometric structures the size of moons hung in space around the planet, their surfaces seeming to bend light itself into impossible patterns. These were the Void Whisperers, and they were nothing like Elena had imagined from the ancient fragments humanity had studied. Holy hell! Captain Morrison's voice came through the quantum communication link. Those things are enormous. Elena had to agree. The enemy vessels were at least 50 kilometers across, built from some dark material that seemed to absorb energy rather than reflect it. Worse, they moved in ways that violated physics as humanity understood it, sliding through space without apparent propulsion while leaving trails of distorted reality in their wake. The Confederation fleet was in full retreat. Elena counted over 400 ships of various designs, from the crystal spires of the Vexi to the energy-based vessels of the Luminari Collective. All of them were fleeing as fast as their drives could manage, and Elena could see why. She watched. One of the geometric Void Whisperer constructs extended what looked like a tendril of twisted space toward a hegemony dreadnought. The massive warship, easily 3 times larger than any human vessel, simply came apart at the molecular level when the tendril touched it. No explosion, no dramatic destruction, just a proud warship dissolving into its component atoms. All ships, this is Admiral Kresh on the Hegemony's Pride, came a broadcast on the emergency frequency. Retreat to fallback position Delta. All civilian vessels maintain maximum distance from enemy constructs. Their weapons appear to target the fundamental forces holding matter together. Elena felt a grim smile cross her face. The Hegemony Admiral, who had dismissed humanity as primitive just months ago, now sounded terrified and helpless. She opened a channel to the Confederation fleet. Admiral Kresh, this is Captain Vasquez of the Terran vessel Terra Invicta. We're moving to engage the enemy. Static filled the channel for several seconds before Admiral Kresh responded. Terran vessel, you must be malfunctioning. Retreat immediately. These are not the small pirates or raiders your species is familiar with. Our most advanced weapons cannot even penetrate their defenses. Understood, Admiral. We'll handle this. Elena could almost feel Admiral Kresh's confusion through the communication link. 3 small human ships, each barely 100 meters long, were moving toward threats that had effortlessly destroyed vessels 10 times their size. Elena, are you getting readings on those things? Captain Kim asked through their private channel. The sensors can barely process them, Elena replied, studying the data streaming through her neural interface. They exist partially in normal space and partially in dimensions our instruments can't even detect. But I can feel them through the dark matter connections. That was the key advantage the human ships possessed. While other species saw the Void Whisperers as incomprehensible aliens using impossible technology, Elena and her fellow pilots could perceive them through the dark matter field that connected everything in the universe. The enemy ships were impressive, but they were still bound by the same fundamental forces that the human vessels could manipulate. All right, people, let's show the galaxy what humans can do, Elena said, feeling the familiar sensation of the ship's systems merging with her consciousness. The Terra Invicta simply vanished from normal space. Aboard the Hegemony's Pride, Admiral Kresh stared at his sensors in confusion. One moment the human ship had been there, moving toward the enemy at a modest pace. The next moment, it was gone entirely. Sensor officer, what happened to the Terran vessel? Admiral Kresh demanded. Unknown, sir. Our instruments show no trace of debris or energy discharge. The ship just disappeared. Before Admiral Kresh could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the Confederation fleet. The Void Whisperer constructs, which had been methodically advancing on the retreating vessels, suddenly began reacting to something. Their geometric forms twisted and writhed as if responding to an attack from an invisible enemy. Then space itself seemed to explode. Elena materialized the Terra Invicta inside the enemy formation, her ship's dark matter manipulators already charging for combat. Through her enhanced perception, she could see the Void Whisperer constructs as they truly were. Ancient artificial intelligences housed in vessels that used primitive dark matter technology. Primitive compared to what humanity had developed. Anyway, engaging primary target, Elena announced, focusing her thoughts on the dark matter cannon that formed the ship's main weapon. The weapon didn't fire energy or projectiles. Instead, it reached into the quantum foam that existed between atoms and simply told the target's matter to stop holding together. The nearest Void Whisperer construct, a massive pyramid-shaped vessel that had been advancing on Nexus Prime's orbital defenses, began to unravel from the inside out. The ancient AI controlling the construct tried to respond, sending tendrils of twisted space toward Elena's ship. But the Terra Invicta was no longer where the attack was aimed. Elena had shifted the ship through dark matter currents to appear behind another target, already charging weapons for the next shot. Morrison, Kim, you're clear for engagement. Elena called to her fellow captains. Sol's vengeance and humanity ascendant materialized on opposite sides of the enemy formation, their own dark matter weapons beginning the systematic destruction of constructs that had terrorized the galaxy. For millions of years, the human ships moved like ghosts, appearing and disappearing at will while their weapons reached across impossible distances to strike targets that had seemed invulnerable moments before. Admiral Kresh watched the battle with growing amazement and horror. The 3 small human ships were doing what his entire fleet could not. They were winning. The Void Whisperer constructs that had brushed aside the Confederation's most advanced weapons, like annoying insects, were being systematically destroyed by vessels he had dismissed as barely spaceworthy. How is this possible? He whispered to his aide. The aide, a young hegemony officer who had studied human technology reports, could only shake his 4-armed head in bewilderment. According to our intelligence, human ships use basic fusion drives and kinetic weapons. What we're seeing should be impossible. The battle lasted exactly 8 minutes. When it was over, 17 Void Whisperer constructs had been reduced to expanding clouds of elementary particles. The 3 human ships hung motionless in space, apparently undamaged despite having faced weapons that could unravel matter at the subatomic level. Elena opened a general communication channel to the Confederation fleet. Admiral Kresh, the immediate Threat to Nexus Prime has been neutralized. We're transmitting tactical data on Void Whisperer capabilities to assist with future encounters. The silence that followed lasted nearly a minute before Admiral Kresh found his voice. Captain Vasquez, how did you do that? Elena smiled, remembering all the times Confederation delegates had dismissed humanity as too primitive to contribute meaningfully to galactic affairs. We've been working on some new technology, Admiral. Turns out humans are pretty good at figuring things out when we put our minds to it. As reports of the battle began spreading across Confederation communication networks, Elena knew that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's newest and weakest member species. They had just demonstrated capabilities that made every other military force in known space obsolete. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant when humans decided to take the stage. Through her neural link with the ship's sensors, Elena detected more Void Whisperer signals coming from the galactic core. The enemy they had just defeated was only a scouting force. The real threat was still out there, and it would be coming soon. But now the galaxy knew that Earth had children who could fight impossible wars and win them. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation had been called within hours of the battle at Nexus Prime. But Ambassador Sarah Chen could see that normal diplomatic procedures had completely broken down. Species that had maintained formal alliances for centuries were now eyeing each other with suspicion and fear. The careful balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable was crumbling as everyone tried to understand what humanity's victory really meant. Chancellor Vexmore of the Vexi Empire stood at the central speaking platform, his crystalline form vibrating with barely controlled agitation. His musical voice carried sharp, discordant notes that Sarah had learned indicated extreme stress among his people. "We demand an immediate explanation," Chancellor Vexmore declared. "The humans claim to possess only primitive technology, yet their vessels displayed capabilities that violate known physics. The Confederation has been deceived." Admiral Kresh of the Hegemony Navy was next to speak, his forearms gesturing in what Sarah recognized as signs of confusion and fear. "I witnessed the battle personally. 3 human ships destroyed 17 Void Whisperer constructs in 8 minutes. Our combined fleet of 400 vessels couldn't even scratch their defenses." Researcher Quintal of the Exploration Guild approached his speaking platform, tentacles shifting through colors that indicated deep concern. "The Guild has analyzed all available sensor data from the battle. The human weapons appear to manipulate fundamental forces in ways we cannot explain. Their ships moved through space-time itself as if it were a navigable medium." Sarah sat quietly, knowing that everything she said now would be scrutinized by thousands of alien intelligence services. Earth had authorized her to reveal some details about humanity's new capabilities, but the complete truth about dark matter manipulation was still classified at the highest levels. The questions came rapidly from all sides. How long had humanity possessed this technology? Why had they hidden it? What other capabilities were they concealing? Each species wanted to know if their previous assessments of human limitations had been completely wrong. "The United Earth government has always been transparent about our military capabilities," Sarah said when called upon to respond. "Our recent technological advances were developed in response to emerging threats to galactic security." "Lies." Chancellor Vexmore's form rang like a struck bell. "You sat in these chambers for years, allowing us to believe you were weak and primitive, while secretly developing weapons that make our most advanced military forces obsolete." The Luminary Collective's energy-based representative pulsed with frequencies that indicated suspicion. "Your ships appeared and disappeared at will. They targeted enemies across impossible distances. These are not recent developments. Such technology would require decades of research and testing." Sarah had to admit they were right about that. Project Dark Reach had indeed been under development for over 10 years, hidden from even humanity's closest allies in the Confederation. But explaining the reasoning behind that secrecy would require revealing just how thoroughly the other species had underestimated and dismissed human potential. "Ambassador Chen," came a new voice from the viewing galleries above. Sarah looked up to see Queen Zara Eth of the Stellaris Unity. one of the few species that had always treated humanity with respect. "Can you tell us if these new human vessels could pose a threat to Confederation member worlds?" The question silenced the chamber. Sarah realized that behind all the diplomatic protests and demands for information lay a much simpler fear. If humans could destroy the Void Whisperers so easily, what would stop them from conquering the galaxy? "Earth has no territorial ambitions beyond our current colonies," Sarah replied carefully. "Our new defensive capabilities were developed solely to protect against threats like the Void Whisperers. We remain committed to peaceful cooperation within the Confederation framework." Admiral Kresh's deep voice rumbled through the chamber. "With respect, Ambassador, your assurances carry little weight when backed by weapons we cannot understand or counter. How can the Confederation maintain stability when one member species possesses overwhelming military superiority?" The question struck at the heart of galactic politics. For millennia, the Confederation had worked because no single species could dominate all the others. Military power was distributed among dozens of major civilizations, creating a balance that encouraged diplomacy over warfare. Humanity's demonstration at Nexus Prime had shattered that balance completely. Sarah's communication device chimed with an urgent message from Earth. She quickly read the encrypted text and felt her pulse quicken. 3 more Void Whisperer fleets had been detected moving out from the galactic core, each one larger than the force that had attacked Nexus Prime. "Distinguished delegates," Sarah said, standing to address the chamber. "I've just received word that our long-range sensors have detected additional Void Whisperer forces approaching Confederation space. 3 separate fleets, estimated arrival in various sectors over the next 6 weeks. The announcement sent waves of panic through the assembled representatives. Species that had been demanding answers about human military capabilities suddenly found themselves facing a much more immediate concern. "How large are these fleets?" Queen Zareth asked. "Each one contains between 30 and 50 major constructs along with supporting vessels of unknown configuration," Sarah replied. Based on the tactical data from Nexus Prime, conventional Confederation forces would be insufficient to stop even one of these fleets. The implications were clear to everyone in the chamber. Without human intervention, entire sectors of the galaxy would fall to the Void Whisperers, but asking for human protection meant acknowledging Earth's new position as the dominant military power in known space. Chancellor Vexmore's crystalline form had stopped vibrating, his musical tones becoming very quiet. "Are the human forces prepared to defend Confederation worlds from these threats?" Sarah nodded. "Earth's Defense Council has authorized Captain Vasquez and her fleet to respond to Void Whisperer incursions wherever they occur. However, our ships cannot be everywhere at once. We strongly recommend that all member species begin evacuating non-essential populations from systems in the projected attack zones." The next few hours devolved into desperate planning sessions as species tried to organize massive refugee movements while maintaining some semblance of normal government. The hegemony, despite their military pride, quietly requested human protection for their core worlds. The Vexhi began dismantling critical infrastructure to prevent it from falling into enemy hands. Even the Luminary Collective, beings of pure energy who had seemed almost godlike to humanity, asked for assistance in evacuating their most vulnerable population centers. Through it all, Sarah watched the fundamental transformation of galactic society happening in real time. Species that had treated humans like ignorant children were now begging for protection from the very people they had dismissed. The careful hierarchies and power structures that had defined Confederation politics for thousands of years were collapsing under the weight of humanity's demonstrated superiority. But perhaps most telling was what wasn't being discussed. Nobody was talking about limiting human military power or demanding technology-sharing agreements. Nobody suggested forming a coalition to contain Earth's new capabilities. The simple reality was that the galaxy needed humanity's protection, and everyone knew it. As the session finally ended and delegates began returning to their homeworlds to organize evacuation efforts, Sarah received another message from Captain Vasquez. The human fleet had successfully engaged and destroyed a Void Whisperer scouting force in the Outer Rim, preventing an attack on a major Keltor mining colony. The news would spread quickly through Confederation communication networks, adding to humanity's growing reputation as the galaxy's protector. But Sarah knew that each victory also increased the other species' dependence on human military power. The galaxy was learning to live in a universe where Earth's children could appear anywhere, defeat any threat, and reshape the balance of power with their very presence. Whether they wanted to admit it or not, every species in the Confederation was beginning to understand that their future survival depended entirely on maintaining humanity's goodwill. The age of human dominance had begun, not through conquest or threat, but through the simple demonstration that when the galaxy faced extinction, only Earth's people had the power to save it. 6 months after the first battle at Nexus Prime, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the largest gathering in Confederation history. Representatives from over 3,000 worlds filled the massive assembly hall, their various atmospheric requirements, creating a rainbow of containment fields and specialized platforms. But unlike previous sessions where she had been relegated to the back corners, Sarah now occupied the central speaking platform reserved for the galaxy's most powerful leaders. Transformation had not happened overnight. Each successful engagement against the Void Whisperers had shifted the balance of power further in humanity's favor. Captain Vasquez and her growing fleet of dark matter warships had become legendary figures, appearing wherever the ancient enemy threatened and leaving nothing but debris in their wake. 3 major Void Whisperer invasions had been stopped completely, with human forces taking minimal casualties while enemy fleets were annihilated. But military victories were only part of the story. The real change had come in the months that followed, as the galaxy's economic and political systems adapted to the new reality of human supremacy. Trade routes that had avoided human space for decades now actively sought it out, knowing that cargo protected by Earth's forces was absolutely safe from piracy or enemy attack. The hegemony, whose military had once been the Confederation's backbone, now paid substantial fees for human escort services through their own territory. The proud Vexhai Empire had quietly negotiated a mutual defense pact that everyone understood was actually a protection agreement. Sarah activated the chamber's holographic display system, showing a real-time map of the galaxy with human patrol routes marked in blue. The coverage was impressive. Barely 6 months after revealing their capabilities, Earth's forces were effectively policing a significant portion of known space. Fellow beings of the Confederation, Sarah began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Today we gather to formalize what has already become the galaxy's new reality. The Pax Terra initiative will establish a permanent framework for peace and security throughout Confederation space. The silence that greeted her words was not the dismissive indifference she had faced in previous years. This was the focused attention of beings who understood they were witnessing a historic moment. The galaxy's power structure was being officially reorganized, and everyone present knew there was no alternative to accepting the new order. Under the Pax Terra framework, Sarah continued, human military forces will maintain permanent patrols in all major systems, providing protection from external threats while respecting the sovereignty of member worlds. The Confederation's existing governmental structure will remain intact, with Earth serving as guarantor of peace rather than direct ruler. Chancellor Vexmore, whose crystalline form had lost much of its previous arrogance, was the first to respond. What assurances do we have that human forces will not abuse this position? Your vessels possess capabilities that could destroy any of our worlds without warning. It was a reasonable fear, Sarah had to admit. The dark matter warships really could appear anywhere in the galaxy within hours and level entire planets if they chose to. The only thing preventing that scenario was humanity's own restraint and commitment to peaceful cooperation. The same assurances we have offered from the beginning, Sarah replied. Earth seeks cooperation, not domination. Our military presence serves only to protect against threats like the Void Whisperers that conventional forces cannot handle. Admiral I. Kresh of the hegemony stood to address the chamber, his forearms moving in gestures of reluctant acceptance. The Admiral Council has reviewed the Pax Terra proposal extensively. While we have concerns about the concentration of military power, we cannot deny that human protection has saved millions of lives. The hegemony formally endorses the initiative. One by one, other major powers added their support. The Luminary Collective praised humanity's restraint and victory. The Exploration Guild noted that human-protected systems had become the safest regions of space for scientific research. Even smaller species that had never trusted the major powers found themselves supporting an arrangement that guaranteed their security. But Sarah knew the real reason for universal acceptance had nothing to do with trust or goodwill. It was simple mathematical reality. Humanity possessed overwhelming military superiority, and everyone understood that the choice was between cooperation and irrelevance. The vote, when it finally came, was unanimous. Not because every species truly supported the Pax Terra initiative, but because opposition would have been meaningless. How do you vote against a power that can reshape reality itself? As the session ended and delegates began filing out to implement the new agreements, Sarah felt a mixture of satisfaction and unease. Humanity had achieved a position of influence beyond their wildest dreams just 50 years after achieving faster-than-light travel. Earth's children now effectively controlled the galaxy's security, economy, and political future, but she also understood the isolation that came with absolute power. Other species no longer saw humans as fellow citizens of the galaxy. They saw them as benevolent overlords whose favor had to be maintained at all costs. Genuine friendship and partnership had become nearly impossible when every interaction was colored by the knowledge of humanity's overwhelming superiority. A priority. Communication from Captain Vasquez interrupted Sarah's thoughts. She accepted the connection and saw Elena's image appear on her personal display, with the bridge of the Terra Invicta visible in the background. "Ambassador, we've just received long-range sensor data from the Galactic Edge," Elena reported. "We're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from outside our galaxy entirely. Whatever's out there is larger than anything the Void Whisperers ever fielded." Sarah felt a familiar chill of concern. How long until they arrive? Unknown. But they're definitely artificial constructs, and they're heading directly for the galactic core. If I had to guess, I'd say something noticed what happened to the Void Whisperers and decided to investigate. The implications were staggering. Humanity had just finished establishing dominance over their own galaxy, only to discover that even larger threats existed beyond the rim of known space. Whatever was coming would make the Void Whisperers look like a minor inconvenience. "Elena, are our forces prepared for engagement with unknown threats of that magnitude?" Captain Vasquez's expression grew determined. "We've learned a lot about dark matter manipulation in the past 6 months. The new ships coming online next month will be even more capable than the original 3. Whatever's coming, we'll be ready for it." Sarah nodded, feeling both pride and worry. Humanity had risen from galactic newcomers to supreme protectors in less than a year, but the universe apparently contained challenges that would test even their remarkable abilities. She turned back to look at the assembly hall, where alien delegates were still discussing the details of their new reality. They had no idea that an even greater threat was approaching, one that might make their concerns about human dominance seem trivial in comparison. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, the galaxy had acknowledged what everyone had known since the Battle of Nexus Prime. Humanity controlled the fundamental forces of the universe, and therefore controlled the future of all intelligent life in known space. The other species could adapt to this new reality, or be left behind by the march of history. Either way, Earth's children would continue to stand watch over a galaxy that had learned to live in the shadow of human power. Outside the station's viewports, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that the balance of cosmic power had shifted forever. Somewhere among those distant lights, Captain Vasquez and her dark matter warships patrolled the void, ready to face whatever challenges the universe might throw at them. The galaxy stood immobilized not by force or threat, but by the simple recognition that humanity had mastered forces beyond the comprehension of older, supposedly wiser civilizations. And in that immobility, a new age of peace and human dominance had begun.